Hi everybody, welcome to another adventure exploring nature and learning about science. In our last lesson, we saw how pollinators help flowers help plants make seeds. Today, we're going to review the pollination story and look at many of the different varieties that the pollination story takes as different kinds of flowers attract different kinds of pollinators. Flowers are usually very bright colors. The bright color attracts the pollinator. And if a pollinator comes, the flower can make seeds. Let's take a look at how that happens. Seeds are made when sperm from one flower mixes with the ovules of a different individual but same kind of flower. If the sperm from one daffodil can mix with the ovules of another daffodil, the second daffodil can make seeds. And if the sperm from another daffodil can mix with the ovules of a different daffodil, the different daffodil will make seeds. But the daffodils are far apart. So how does the sperm from one get to the ovules of another? Neither the sperm nor the ovules can drive. The sperm and the ovules can't take a bus to get together, and they can't jump on an airplane. So the only thing left for them to do is hire a taxi. Seeds are made when sperm from one flower mixes with the ovules of a different individual but same kind of flower. How does that mixing happen? It happens with pollinators. Sometimes those pollinators can be animals, and sometimes the pollinators can just be the wind. When pollinators are flying, they notice the colorful petals of the flower, so they go check them out, and when they check them out, they're looking for something sweet to drink, and that sweet thing is called nectar. As an animal looks for the nectar, it rubs up against one of the many anthers, each which is held high by a filament. Inside each anther is pollen, and inside the pollen is sperm. Whether the anthers are big or small, as the animal rubs up against the anthers, it gets pollen all over its body. When they walk, crawl, or fly to another flower, some of that pollen rubs off and gets on the second flower. There, the pollen rubs on the stigma, goes down the style, into the ovary, where the sperm from the pollen mixes with the ovules then start to turn into seeds, and the whole ovary turns into a fruit. And that, my friends, is how flowers make babies. Now, let's take a look at some flowers we know and some fruits we know to see how the flowers make seeds and what it looks like when they make the seeds. In the spring, we see box elder maple flowers blowing on the tree. And in the fall, we see box elder maple seeds. Seeds used to be the ovules, and the wings attached to them used to be the ovaries. In the spring, we see red maple flowers. In the fall, those flowers and their ovaries grow into seeds. These are the redbud flowers, and when a bee visits them, the pollen and sperm from one flower mix with the ovules in another. The ovaries turn into those brown pea pods, and the ovules turn into the little seeds inside. Oak flowers, more oak flowers, oak seeds. The bloodroot flower is on a separate stem from the rest of the plant, and the bloodroot seed pod is also on its own stem. These are dogwood flowers in the spring, and these are dogwood leaves with almost ripe berries in the fall. This is the jack-in-the-pulpit flower in the spring, and when the petals fall off and the ovary gets bigger, the ovary turns into seeds by the fall. And let's not forget some of the ovaries and ovules that we see almost every day. Apples are the ovary from an apple flower. Inside the apple are apple seeds, and those seeds were the ovules of the apple flower. A raspberry. The raspberry used to be the ovary of a raspberry flower, and the seeds inside used to be ovules of the raspberry flower. The kiwi fruit used to be the ovary of the kiwi flower, and the seeds inside used to be the ovules of the kiwi flower. The ovary of the pepper flower, the ovules of the pepper flower. The ovules of the avocado flower, the ovary of the avocado flower. And just to help you remember, here's the pollination story one more time. See if you can say it along with the narrator. How seeds are made. A bee, butterfly, or even a fly might be flying by, and as it flies, it notices the colorful petals. Seeing those colorful petals is where the story begins. Once upon a time, a bee was flying all around. As the bee flew around, the bee started to get hungry. And as the bee got hungry, the bee started to look for some food. There were no signs out that said, "Hey bee, come get some food," but the bee did notice some colorful petals. As the bee noticed the colorful petals, the bee decided, maybe I should go and check them out. And so the bee went to check out the colorful petals. As the bee got closer, it started to smell something sweet. So the bee decided to get closer and closer. And as the bee got closer and closer, it started going down and it rubbed up against the anther, which was held high by the filament. On the anther was pollen, and the bee got pollen on its body. The sweet smell got stronger and stronger, and the bee found the nectary. In the nectary, the bee got a drink of nectar, but the drink was very small, and the bee was still hungry, so the bee decided it needed to fly away and find some more. The bee was feeling pretty proud of itself because the bee appeared to be learning to recognize where it could find nectar. Just look for those orange petals. They're like a big sign that says, "Nectar is in here." The bee noticed the nectar and immediately rubbed up against the stigma on its way down to get the nectar. The bee drinks the nectar and flies away. Meanwhile, while the bee had been looking for nectar, some of the pollen came off its body and is still stuck on the stigma. The pollen falls through the stigma, down the style, all the way down until it reaches the ovary. In the ovary, the sperm that's in the pollen mixes with the ovules that are in the ovary, and the ovules start to grow into seeds. As the ovules are growing into seeds, the ovary gets bigger, and grows into a fruit. Well, there you have it, friends. Now you've seen how each part of a flower helps in pollination. And the more carefully you look, you'll see that there's different kinds of pollinators, each trying to get pollen and nectar from different kinds of flowers. The flowers are benefiting because the pollinators move the pollen, and the animals are benefiting because they get some food. Let's see what other ways that plants and animals can interact to help the plant and help the animal. Tune in next time for another adventure exploring nature and learning about science.